Hey, what's going on, y'all, everybody out there in the land of the YouTubes. Welcome to the Friday edition of Burn It Down with Kim Brown. I'm so excited to see all y'all smiling faces up in the places. I'm Rain to Soot. I already see you in here early. What's up, Alicia? What's up, all my good folks who have been supporting us here. This is Black woman-led media. And it is so vital that you all show up. You know, I appreciate the funds, the coins that y'all drop us, which is deeply appreciated. But really, when you show up here and listen to our topics and check out what our guests have to say, really, that to me is more valuable than gold, even more valuable than platinum, even more valuable than that $600 that Joe Biden's bitch ass still owe us. Okay, so I appreciate y'all. Don't forget to hit the like, hit the subscribe button if you have not already done so. What's going on, everybody? Ursula, how you doing, hon? What's up, Afraid Not? I appreciate to see you in here. David Silberg, how you feeling, baby? Guy Shaw, Big Teal, Anna Hart. Oh man, the whole crew is up here. Schultzy 100 is up in here too. Oh my goodness. Hey y'all. So we've got a really vitally important show for you today. Okay. Now, I know this week marked 1 year since Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd. And it was so important that we remember the sisters and brothers who have fallen to violence, period, right? Violence of all forms, but police violence, especially because the state does not have a right to kill us, right? And while we are remembering George Floyd and Andrew Brown Jr. and Ma'Khia Bryant and the endless number of people who have been killed by police, it's important that we remember the people who police have brutalized and have been violent towards, but who survived those encounters, because there has been so many of us, y'all, who have been permanently disabled from encounters with the police, people who are incarcerated on trumped up charges and who have survived violent police encounters. And today is a day on our program that we're going to talk about one of those people. And his name is Keith Davis Jr. And Keith Davis Jr. is currently serving a 50-year sentence in jail for a murder that he, his family, and his supporters, and some independent investigations have concluded that he could not have done, right? And apparently, the judicial system thinks that maybe Keith didn't do this crime either, because out of 4 murder trials, the state of Maryland, city of Baltimore, was only able to convict Keith once on the 4th time around, right? But a judge ruled this month that Keith is deserving of a new trial. So it's looking very likely that Keith Davis Jr. is about to get a 5th trial, which means that the state of Maryland, city of Baltimore, more specifically, the Office of State's Attorneys, Marilyn Mosby, is going to pursue charges against Keith once again. And there are lots of people in the city across this country who say that enough is enough. Marilyn Mosby needs to accept defeat. She does not have the goods to secure a conviction against Keith without using underhanded or nefarious tactics, right? And we are going to be joined today with Kelly Davis. Kelly is Keith's wife. Kelly is Keith's tireless advocate. This saga has been happening to the Davis family for 6 years now, right? And it's agonizing. It is just incredible what the state has put this family through. And I think it's important for you all to know what happened to Keith Davis Jr. if you don't already know. So we're going to be joined with Kelly in just a moment. Also coming up in the show, we're going to be joined with Lisa Snowden-McCrae. Y'all know Lisa. Lisa's a journalist, Baltimore-based journalist. Lisa keeps her foot on the necks of elected officials and politicians in the city. And the way that Marilyn Mosby's office has handled lots of things, but specific to Keith's case, has been nothing short of deplorable. And I definitely want Lisa to weigh in here. So before we get started, y'all, we put together a clip. Y'all know how we do with the montages, right? So this is a compilation of local news clips, taking it piece by piece about the saga. And again, this is just to present, I guess, the surface level facts. In watching some of these old clips by lots of local Baltimore television stations, I was less than enthused at the tone and inference that some of these news packages contain, but y'all just keep that in mind. And the first clip in this montage leads off with a sit-in at Marilyn Mosby's office. I believe this was January of 16. And it was done by Be More Block. And we have some other clips in here, like I said, from local TV affiliates in Baltimore, WMAR, WBAL, and WJZ, just so I can properly attribute what y'all about to see so the members don't get mad. What's up, Latif Menz? Love to see y'all up in here. I appreciate y'all being here, y'all. This is a very, very, very important program. Tunde, can we take a look at that clip, please, when you get a chance? Thank you.
Yeah, we're here right now for Keith Davis Jr. He's a man very similar to a lot of the police brutality issues that we've seen recently in Baltimore, except that this man is still alive. He's been suffering in jail for 200 days. On June 7th, he was minding his own business, his earbuds in his head. He was chased by some Baltimore City police with their guns drawn into a place with one entrance, one exit. They cornered him in there. He said he was unarmed. He wanted to come out and just survive the encounter. Baltimore police had other ideas. They fired 44 times, hit him 3 times, including once through the face. The bullet is still in his neck, up against his spine. You can see it when you see him. And he's sitting in jail, having to change his own bandages, having to deal with the prison withholding medication, having to deal with false charges, keeping him away from his family during the holidays. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Drop the charges, free Keith Davis! 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 Drop the charges.
Welcome back. Well, police shot at a Baltimore man 44 times after they suspected he committed a robbery. One of those bullets got him in the face and landed him in the hospital. In turn, Keith Davis Jr. was then charged with 16 different counts related to the robbery he claimed he did not commit. This week, a jury in Baltimore acquitted him on 15 of the 16 charges the city attempted to pin on him after shooting him in the face.
Davis was recently tried for the charges related to that case and was acquitted on all but the gun charge. At the news conference announcing the new first-degree murder charge, Commissioner Davis explained the timing 9 months after Jones's murder.
Homicide investigations take time. They take collaboration with our partners, and our partners in this case included the state's attorney's office and the FBI. So we wanted to make sure that we had sufficient evidence gathered.
The Civilian Review Board says all the charges against Davis should be dropped.
Mr. Davis was shot by the police unjustly. This information was in the hands of the state's attorney's office for Baltimore City. This information was in the hands of the police department for Baltimore City. And as we have been crying for since the beginning of this saga, that these charges should have and shall be dismissed.
The Office of the State's Attorney had this to say about the findings. Quote, the board's findings are separate and apart from the criminal proceedings currently pending against the defendant, for which we cannot comment. The findings call for 2 police officers to be terminated and for 2 more to be suspended.
Circumstantial evidence tied only by a handgun, that we now have an independent review from the Civilian Review Board. The officers who originally testified in this matter testified inconsistently.
In Davis's 3 previous trials, there were some complications. In the first and third, the jury deadlocked. But in the second, the judge threw out the conviction because of an issue with evidence.
In light of everything that's happened, no matter what verdict comes out, I don't believe that we could be confident, even if 12 people vote to convict on this fourth trial. I don't think we can have confidence in that verdict.
A judge threw out the request for a new trial as the fourth murder trial for Keith Davis comes to an end. Davis was sentenced to 50 years. A new trial has been granted for Keith Davis Jr., or Sr., that is. He is the Baltimore man who has been on trial 4 times for allegedly killing a Pimlico security guard. Now, in July 2019, at his 4th trial, Davis was convicted of killing Kevin Jones back in June of 2015 while on duty at Pimlico Racecourse. Investigators say cell phone evidence and surveillance video links him to the crime. But Davis has always maintained his innocence. So now it will be up to the city state's attorney, Marilyn Mosby, to decide if prosecutors will try Davis a 5th time or drop the charges.
It's a pretty stunning story, everybody. I'm looking at your comments in the chat, and yes, the Baltimore police shot at this man 44 times. He survived, and they put him in jail. And the state's attorney's office was only able to convict him 1 out of 4 times. That is, as I was saying in my Patreon, and I'm not saying this to be flip at all, but that is a terrible shooting percentage, okay? 25%, that means perhaps this is something that you don't need to be doing. You guys, let me welcome Keith's wife and tireless advocate. Like I said, everybody should want to have a spouse like Kelly that is going to go to bat and go to the ends of the earth to try to get her husband home. Kelly Davis is joining us now. Kelly, I really appreciate you making some time to be here. I know you're in transit, you're traveling, and I so appreciate you coming to us and letting us talk to you about what's happened to your husband. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I'm so sorry. I thought I would be my destination by now, but holiday traffic has been really, really crazy. But thank you for having me, and thank you for uplifting Keith's story and educating. That's what we've always set out to do.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, the most recent news is the last news clip that we heard where Denise Cope got your husband's name wrong. But there's going to be a 5th trial for Keith, that his conviction for murder, it hasn't been thrown out, or has it been thrown out? I have to tell you, Kelly, like in doing research on this case, there are so many twists and turns, and actually on the internet, it seems as though like it was sort of difficult to find video specifically about the 2nd trial that got where the trial was thrown out. So I thought that was interesting. But can you kind of bring us up to speed on how is it that we have arrived at now a 5th murder trial for Keith? What has to be some sort of record?
It is. Actually, Keith will be the 2nd man in American history to be tried this many times, short of Curtis Flowers, who was tried by the white DA in Winona, Mississippi, Doug Evans, until recently when his charges were dropped. So Keith now will exceed Curtis and become the only person in United States history to be tried this many times. His conviction is thrown out. As of now, the conviction is overturned. It is vacated. He is now in pretrial posture, so he is at the present time not convicted of anything. And I know that the media in Baltimore kind of gets that wrong when they say, "Oh, he's serving 50 years." He's not serving anything because he is not convicted of anything at the moment.
So how come they haven't let Keith out?
Well, Keith has a bail review on the books. And I know this is another discrepancy that I want to clear up for Baltimore, especially its elected officials and its citizens, that I keep hearing the language that Marilyn Mosby may or possibly will try him again. Keith has a bail review that was put on the books to get him on home detention as he's very sick. He has a lot of injuries from the shooting from the police. And the state's attorney office, if they weren't going to try him, could have just either null processed or didn't respond. They have responded in the most disgusting, egregious, unethical way as to why he should not be released on home detention, which clearly shows that Marilyn Mosby intends to try Keith for a 6th time.
I mean, it sounds punitive, and beyond that, it doesn't sound as though the state's attorney's office has had a successful track record in trying to prosecute your husband for this case, and even for the earlier times where they tried him on, what was it, 15 charges, and 16 charges, and he was acquitted on 15 of those charges. So it seems as though the state's attorneys and the prosecutors don't seem to have a strong track record in getting convictions against your husband. Why do you think these prosecutions continue against Keith? Ellie?
These prosecutions continue against Keith because Marilyn Mosby's ego is wrapped up in this persecution. I think that when you take someone who has weaponized identity politics and you take a city that's just dying for representation, so they absolutely are able to do the bare minimum, and they're loved and they're revered. And then here comes a case 41 days later where all of that is challenged, that progressive prosecutor, that change agent, and you are unable to, now you're being challenged. Now you're being looked at adversely. And she couldn't take that. She could not take everyone not loving her and revering her. So this is personal for her because people have challenged her about Keith's prosecution. They've challenged the fact that Keith was a police brutality survivor. He's a police brutality victim. This was state sanctioned violence, and she did not protect him. She prosecuted him. And for that, people have constantly challenged her, and for her, it's personal.
I want us to come back to State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby in a bit, because I think what you're saying is extremely important. It's very valid, and it's representative of a lot of people in Baltimore City who are largely dissatisfied with the way that Marilyn Mosby has conducted herself in office, especially as it pertains to dealing with your husband's case. But you mentioned, obviously, that Keith survived his encounter with Baltimore police. And I wanted to ask you about Keith, about how he's doing, unfortunately, like what all this has been like for you. Like, the cursory knowledge about what I know about this case, I mean, my heart breaks for you, because it's like the amount of stress. I mean, you're dealing with the states, with the prosecutors, you're dealing with the cops, you're dealing with public opinion, you're dealing with all these things that are not easy things to deal with, especially as a young person, as yourself. So first of all, let me circle back. How is Keith doing? I mean, he survived being shot out 44 times, and he's been in jail during the COVID pandemic. And we know how incarcerated people were largely disregarded during this pandemic. So can you talk to us about Keith's health and about how you all are doing?
Keith suffered 3 wounds, one to the face that came out enlarged in his neck, one to his arm, a grazed wound to the back. The wound to his face shattered his entire face. So as of right now, Keith has just as much titanium on this side of his face as he has bone on his other side of his face. He has several health issues, as pulmonary issues, breathing, and you spoke to COVID a couple of months ago. We filed for a petition to have Keith released to home detention because of his lung and his pulmonary issues from being shot. He is more susceptible and more vulnerable to COVID. The Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office, Marilyn Mosby, and her prosecutor Patrick Seidel fought us tooth and nail, said that he was fine. Keith eventually had internal bleeding and contracted COVID, and about almost 2 months ago, I received a call where I had to consent to 3 different procedures to save his life. He was on a ventilator and everything else, and all of that could have been prevented if he was just released to be able to see medical doctors. So Keith's health is in not the best shape. He has his good days, but he also has his bad days. And it is simply because once Keith was shot by police, he was supposed to have a series of medical follow-ups and medical care. And because he was thrown into jail and was not treated the subpar, inadequate medical treatment in prisons, Keith, his health has suffered long-standing because of that.
Do you think that Keith was intentionally not treated, perhaps in the hope that he would just succumb to his injuries?
Absolutely. One of the things that came out a couple of years ago was from a former internal affairs officer who was there at the time of Keith's shooting. They were waiting for Keith to die. They were waiting for him to die. They were literally counting down, praying that he died. But God and my husband, being as strong as he is, he fought, and he's alive. But absolutely, I absolutely believe so. I absolutely believe that even Marilyn Mosby and the way that they have fought to hinder, her office has absolutely hindered. We've had judges say, okay, you are hell-bent on charging this man. You need to get him medical attention. And we've had her prosecutors reach out to doctors and say, well, no, this is a stall tactic. You don't need to see him. So absolutely, that's a great point. I absolutely believe that this was intentional.
It's stunning, and I say disappointing, and disappointing is not the right word because it's far beyond disappointing. It's that's very bad. Kelly, a question that a lot of people have has to do with the issue of double jeopardy, and people are wondering, how is it that the prosecutor's office, Marilyn Mosby's office, is able to continuously prosecute your husband for the same crime over and over again? I know you've been dealing with the legal system long enough to be able to explain to us, why is it that double jeopardy has not attached itself in your husband's case?
So double jeopardy, and I'm actually going to school for law now so that this happens to no one ever again, that there is never another Keith Davis Jr. and there's never another Kelly Davis, that we are educated and we have people that know how this works in fights. But double jeopardy works like this. Upon a conviction or an acquittal, then they can't come back and charge you with the same crime. However, if the case is not adjudicated, like there's no finality to it, so once the case is overturned, double jeopardy doesn't apply. Double jeopardy would only apply if Keith was acquitted. And technically he's had one mistrial, then he was convicted, and then the state brought in a lying informant that was just another mess. And then he got another trial because of the lack of evidence. Then that case, so that means that case is now over and you start anew. That case ended in a mistrial. So then once that case ends in a mistrial, you start all over again. You get a new trial. He was convicted in the fourth trial because of the prosecutor absolutely doctored evidence. I'm going to call a spade. And then there was also some Kanzati issues with the jurors' questions in voir dire. And now that case has been overturned, you start anew. So until there's a final decision, like an acquittal or a conviction that can't be overturned or what have you, then double jeopardy will not apply.
Okay. Did everybody understand that? I got it. I understand. The only way that double jeopardy, because he has not yet been acquitted, is basically what it comes down to. Got it. Okay, thank you so much for explaining that, because that is absolutely a question that a lot of people had. Kelly, going back to some of his previous trials, we had a deadlock jury in one trial, and the second trial, I believe the case was thrown out altogether, or was it some allegations of prosecutorial misconduct or mishandling the evidence? Like the judge was like, Marilyn Mosby's office has done something improper, and so this trial is not going to move forward. Can you elaborate on what it is that her office did to get the case against your husband tossed not once but twice?
Yes. So in the second case, the judge Baltimore judges are heavily pro-state. So she didn't necessarily throw them under the bus like she probably should have. She actually threw herself under the bus and said that there was some judicial misconduct, which I don't agree with. So there was a jailhouse informant who ended up being a federal inmate that for some reason was housed in a state prison, who claimed to come about and say that Keith came and confessed to him, and he gave details of the case verbatim, or things that were wrong, only the things that was in the media. And so they brought him into trial. but they did not tell us anything about him. He literally came 2 days before trial. Excuse me, the judge would not allow the defense to know anything about him. We ended up not finding out about him until after Keith was convicted. Come to find out, he was a part of a Texas syndicate gang that was in federal prison for RICO charges. And in his in their information about them, they claimed that, oh, it was just drugs. He was just, in prison for drugs. Come to find out, he was burning bodies for the gang. So once we found that information out, we filed that motion and the judge agreed. We were not giving information about him, and therefore, if a jury had known those things about him, more than likely they would not have convicted the way that they did. The other case recently that was overturned because of the Kazadi ruling. The Kazadi ruling is a turn from tiding law, which was like a 54-year old law that says that as a defendant, you have certain questions that you are allowed to ask the jury around presumption of innocence and around presumption of innocence, and I believe I forgot the other one, but it deals with jury questions. And because Keith asked for those questions and we were not given them, he fell under Kazadi. However, the judge at the time ruled, even though we let him know that the language in the ruling, the Court of Special Appeals had made an error with the language, saying that it wasn't perspective, meaning if you came after the fact, you don't get it, which law doesn't work that way, right? Law works like you don't get to beat me to the punch. If it's changed for my case, it's changed for all cases. And this judge held on to the motion for 14 months, and then he just finally ruled on it and gave Keith a new trial.
The judge held on to the motion for 14 months. It took him 14 months to rule on that?
He actually denied it at first, and then the language inside of the motion was literally changed an hour after Keith was sentenced. We filed a motion to reconsider within that same hour. We called on him, we emailed, we did everything that we could to tell him, like, hey, look, they changed the language. Keith's lawyer, Deborah Levy, she's amazing. She'd actually said before he sentenced him, Your Honor, this language is going to be changed. Why not just beat it to the punch now and give him a new trial? And Judge Sylvester Cox refused. And he only recently, 14 months later, so Keith did not have to have eternal bleeding. He did not have to contract COVID. He did not have to suffer in jail for 14 months. That motion could have been ruled on, but it was not.
That is terrible. I mean, the man sat in jail for another year and some change over something that could have been done either the same day or within 30 days or 60, like a much shorter time frame. The judge could have ruled on that. See, that's why I know, and you know this too, I'm sure, Kelly, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I mean, the whole system, corrupt, top to bottom, the cops, prosecutors, judges, the crime labs, I mean, everything. I want us to get to, okay, so I'm not sure if you had a chance to see the little video montage clip that we did, but in the clips that we did, looking back at some of the news coverage of Keith's many trials now, one person that we saw there was former Baltimore Police Commissioner Kevin Davis, who is now the police chief in Fairfax County, Virginia. And Kevin Davis said with so much confidence about all the evidence that they had against your husband. And then we saw a clip from the findings of the Civilian Review Board. Tell me, why is it impossible that your husband, Keith Davis, killed Kevin Jones?
Well, first of all, Commissioner Kevin Davis is a liar. We saw that with Keith's case. We saw that with the Suter murder. He's a liar, a blatant liar. That little press conference that he did literally on day one of the first trial, all of it was discounted. All of it was shown to be untrue. And it's just a bunch of junk science. But that's that. The other part with the Civilian Review Board, and I think that is so distasteful and disrespectful of the state's attorney's office to have released that statement. watching it again just made me even more confirming that that was so rude, because the Civilian Review Board had not a dog in this fight. When we talk about how guilty all of the systems and the programs are, here is an independent investigation without any dog in this fight, and their findings came out that we don't believe he had a gun. We don't believe these officers, they are lying. They shot him for no reason. They use excessive force. And the one independent agency is the, and when we talk about Marilyn Mosby's office and it's progressive and she's a change agent, here is an independent entity with an independent investigation that has evidence that this stuff is not true. And rather than believing or even sitting down with the Civilian Review Board, Marilyn Mosby chose to take the narrative of the police, and she chose to push the narrative of the police. My husband has always been innocent, and the Civilian Review Board saw that with their independent investigation. And this is just a common trend of, and it's infuriating, because in Baltimore, she fought for us. She went after the police. She don't like the police. That is untrue. She absolutely likes the police. She absolutely works with the police. She absolutely is the police. So that's just the difference. She decided to believe the police and carry their narrative and discount and disregard an independent agency free of corruption. And I think that speaks volume, but that's me. A whole other city continues to be bamboozled, and they don't look at it that way.
Wow. I want to bring in Lisa Snowden-McCrae, Baltimore journalist, just kick ass on Twitter. Well, probably one of my favorite people in this city. Lisa don't be letting these elected officials get away with a jack shit. And of course, we love and appreciate that from Lisa. So Lisa, thank you so much for making some time to join us, because I know you have been a witness to what has been happening in the saga of Keith's case, and how Marilyn Mosby's office and Marilyn Mosby specifically has reacted to Kelly and Keith, right? So thank you for making some time here, Lisa. Appreciate it.
A pleasure. It's good to be back on the show.
Thank you, Lisa. I want us, ladies, to take a look at, I think this is from 2018. So Marilyn Mosby sat down with The Real News in 2018. She was interviewed by Baynard Woods. And Kelly, she was asked about two cases. She was asked about Tyrone West, and then she was asked about Keith Davis. And where we're going to pick up on the clip is when Baynard asks Marilyn Mosby about Keith Davis. And her tone when she was answering questions about Tyrone West was very empathetic, very sympathetic, seeming to really understand where Tyrone West's family is coming from, obviously with their loved one being killed by cops. However, her tone changed when she was asked about Keith. And I want you guys to take a look at this. Really, I want the audience to take a look at this, because y'all need to understand how the state's attorney is petty. I can't say it no other word than petty, but petty in the worst way, because this is real life consequences here. So take a look at this clip, y'all. Tell me what you think. And Kelly, I want to get you and Lisa's reaction to this. Tunde, can we take a look at B1, please?
Does that change?
So what I can say about Keith Davis, and I'm not going to get too far into the murder trial because, again, it's still pending, but the case that is already closed is that it was a matter of he was tried in front of his peers, a jury of his peers. And a jury of his peers determined that he was a felon in possession of a handgun. That gun was tied to what is now a pending murder case. So I understand, Kelly is his fiance and she's not happy with me, but my job as state's attorney is to ensure justice for Kevin Jones, right? It's not about Keith Davis for me. It's about Kevin Jones. That was the victim of the homicide.
Incredible from the state's attorney of Baltimore City there, Kelly. And you know what I didn't care for from Marilyn Mosby right there is when she says, I know Kelly's not happy with me, I know Kelly's mad at me. And it's like, you didn't take her curling iron. You understand? Like, you have incarcerated her husband, and have tried him for now going on 5 times, only able to secure a conviction once. That has granted, now he's been granted a new trial, so that conviction's out the window. What is your response to like the way that Marilyn Mosby seems to be intentionally petty towards you, but the consequences are so grave and dire?
Absolutely. But before, I just want to clarify what she said, because she tends to throw out that a jury of his peers convicted him of possession with a felony conviction. Here's the thing that's really getting ready to flip everybody's mind up. Keith was found not guilty of possessing that murder weapon. He was found guilty of possession with a felony conviction because when you have a felony conviction, which Keith has a CDS charge, which is a petty drug charge from when he was 19, you cannot be around any type of guns or weapons. So when Keith was shot, he was shot in the face, he's unconscious, he's on the ground. When the police checked the garage and found this gun on top of a refrigerator, Keith now becomes guilty of constructively possessing that weapon. He was found not guilty of actively having it, which means he was found not guilty of carrying it, shooting it, pointing it, touching it. He was found guilty of merely being around it. And the example I want to give real quick is if you and I, Kim, are riding in the car and I have a felony conviction for drugs and you do not, and there was a gun in the glove box, even if it's yours and it's registered, and the police pull us over, I will go to jail for possession with the felony conviction, even if I didn't even know that it was in the glove box. So the law is so twisted that it means that even if you didn't have it, you could have possessed it if you wanted to. And because you have a felony conviction, no matter what that felony conviction is, you are automatically guilty. So when she says that, she does not break it down in that way. And that's unfortunate, and it's also intentional. As for her saying me, she also tells people she just doesn't like me. I don't know her enough to not to dislike her. I think that she's a very I think that she's very immature. I think that this is personal for her and she wants to consistently make this personal for me. And I think that one of the things that she forgets in these temper tantrums that she throws and this targeting, Marilyn Mosby is in a completely different class than I am. She is pretty much a millionaire. She is the most powerful woman in Baltimore City, yet she continues to throw her weight around and her power to crush me, a Black woman, a Black wife, a Black mother, while touting all around the world about Black girl magic. And I think that it's just unfortunate that people don't see that she utilizes this to basically put such a nasty connotation on me when all I've ever wanted her to do was her job adequately and ethically. And I mean, that is what it is. And, you know, I have nothing against her. At the end of the day, she has crushed glass ceilings and she has walked through doors that I will be able to easily walk through. This is not personal for me, but you are a public servant and you were voted in to do a job. And if no one else holds your feet to the fire to ensure that you do it for my husband, I will.
Lisa Snowden-McCrae, I know, again, like I said, you've been watching this, not just Keith's case, but you cover Baltimore politics. Let me get your opinion about how Marilyn Mosby has conducted herself as it relates to the Davises and Keith's case in particular. Does she act like this is personal for her, in your opinion? Because I see a lot of petty coming from Marilyn Mosby, and it's the worst kind of petty because she is a powerful person, and when powerful people decide to be petty, they fuck up people's lives. Like, what is your observations, Lisa?
Absolutely. I mean, I just wrote for my column that I do for The Real News last week about how a man who saw Marilyn Mosby downtown at an outdoor restaurant, he yelled, "Free Keith Davis Jr." Maryland's response to that was as one of the highest ranking officials in the state, was to give him the finger. The way that then proceeded was Kelly and, the team around Kelly and supporters of Keith and Kelly then shared the video because the gentleman.
Hear her. I can just see her lips moving.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Then, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, you were talking about.
So the video of Marilyn giving this gentleman the finger was then shared online. Marilyn or a staffer then logged on to the state's attorney's office's Twitter account and lied and said, guys, that wasn't a middle finger, that was a thumb. Because of course everybody does this for some reason. I don't know. You give thumbs up when someone's asking you to free a prison black man. And the son and no, not the son, Justine Barron, who I think has been on the show before, highlighted the video, and no, it was very much her middle finger. So it was like a twofold thing. Number one, it was completely improper for somebody in her station to be giving the middle finger like that for a case that she's supposedly still weighing in and figuring out what she's going to do. Second of all, she used the office that she's been given by, the people of Baltimore, the voters of Baltimore City, to lie about it. And the thing that I wrote about was if you lie about that, which is like everyone has cameras in their hands. Everywhere you kind of assume at this point that we're all under a surveillance state. If you're going to lie about something that's so easy to prove, what else are you lying about? Why do you kind of treat the power that you have so casually?
So, Lisa, we have the visuals, as it were, of what you are describing, and this made some news locally. I even think I hope it made some national news, to be honest, since Marilyn Mosby is the liberal media darling, one of the so-called progressive prosecutors. But Tunde, if we can run B2 and have B3 and B4 on deck. So B2 is extremely quick, gang. So Tunde, if you could run B2 like twice, and then we'll go to the state's attorney's tweet where her office lied about her giving the middle finger, and then we'll take a very good up close picture of her actually giving the middle finger. And thank you, Lisa, for crediting Justine. Justine Barron said her source sent her the clip and gleaned these screenshots, and therefore caught Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby in the dumbest lie possible. So Tunde, let's look at that short clip like twice.
Free Keith Davis Jr. Free Keith Davis Jr. Free Keith Davis Jr. Free Keith Davis Jr.
All right. So, and let's check out that tweet. So yeah, that's Mosby allegedly right there. Well, you know, allegedly that's her in the yellow dress. And so let's pop up the tweet, Tunde, from the state's attorney's office. When she was asked about this directly on Twitter, she responded, well, she or someone in her office responded, saying, you know, come on, guys, you know, clearly that's a thumb, you know, let's move on. Right. I'm sorry, Kelly, she was replying directly to you. And okay, where's I don't see the tweet from the state's attorney's office. It must be further down in the thread. It says Baltimore SAO. Oh, okie dokie. All right, so let's pop up the picture. So anyway, the tweet, y'all just got to believe me. It came from Baltimore State Attorney's Office, where she denied giving the supporter of Keith Davis Jr. the finger, but she instead said that it was a thumb. So if we could look at the picture. So I'm sorry, I'm looking on the stream, so it's at a delay. But the picture is circled. You see the middle finger circled. Yeah, no, can you take me off and like put it up full screen, Tunde, so everybody can see it clearly, like just so we are clear. Marilyn Mosby gave the middle finger to a supporter of Keith Davis Jr. And I don't think that Kelly, and correct me if I'm wrong here from speaking out of turn, I don't think you were mad about that. You were mad about the fact that she lied about it. And like Lisa said, if she'll lie about something small like that, what won't she lie about? What hasn't she lied about, Kelly? Oh no, did we lose Kelly? Okay, well guys, hopefully we can get Kelly back. But Lisa, you know, to your point, and Toby Swally, thank you so much for your support. Lisa, to your point, I mean, if the state's attorney, the top prosecutor in the city of Baltimore, who is touting themselves as a progressive, as a reformer, as someone who is seeking to reduce harm in the community, and hopefully trying to use her office to do that. If she lies about something insignificant, like whether or not she was given a thumbs up or the middle finger, I mean, what won't she lie about after that? And what hasn't she already lied about?
And in a normal city, in a normal society where everybody isn't tied up and complicit, her lying would be a big deal. But because we're talking about Baltimore City, because we're talking about a class of Black people who have escaped, who aren't, the working poor, which is the majority of the Black people in Baltimore City, and are kind of interested in preserving their self-interest, it doesn't make a bleep. It doesn't make a bleep.
So Lisa, help me figure this out. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
There's no calls for her to step down. There's no statement from the mayor. I sent the mayor a request for comment on Keith's case last week and was ignored. So there's nothing. There's business as usual, just like it was business as usual when Marilyn's husband, Nick Mosby, ran and won city council president office, the office of city council president, and not much of a blip when it was announced that they were being investigated by the federal government. All of this sounds crazy to say, but it's true.
It does sound crazy to say, y'all. Look, I see people in the comments talk about the talented 10th. This is the best we get. And, this is what representation gets you, right?
Exactly.
It gets you a black face prosecuting your black ass. So there you go. Everything is equal now. Lisa, okay. So, my mama's from Baltimore. and I guess by extension, I am somewhat from Baltimore. I do not consider myself to be from Baltimore, even though I was born in Baltimore City. I was not raised in Baltimore City, but I have a connection to Baltimore because my mother was born and raised and worked her whole life in Baltimore, and I still have relatives there. So I have interest in what happens to Baltimore. And a very good way to get like the pulse of the people is by listening to Black Talk Radio. And there is an AM station. I think it was actually, it's a Kathy Hughes station, WOLB. There's a morning show there that is Black as hell. It is Black and boomer as hell. And everybody who is over the age of 60 calls this show from Baltimore City to give their very well-informed opinions about what is happening in the city in terms of policy, in terms of, how they approve or disapprove of elected officials. And Lisa, I cannot get a gauge on how the city actually feels about Marilyn Mosby, because all these Black boomers were calling up, like you said, defending Marilyn Mosby, like she's one of us and she tried to prosecute the cops and we need to stand by her and protect her. So I heard a lot of that. But then there's a lot of y'all, the vocal advocacy class on Twitter, who is calling out the Mosbys on their very blatant, obvious bullshit. But then there's, portions of white Baltimore that seemingly are out to get Marilyn Mosby. Marilyn Mosby filed a whole complaint with the FCC about the way that she's been covered on Fox 45, WBFF TV in Baltimore, which has a very conservative slant and does not give her favorable media. From your observations, Lisa, I mean, how does the city truly feel about Marilyn Mosby? Like, do people love her and there's a vocal minority of people that dislike her? Is it the opposite? I mean, what's your take? What's your gauge on that?
There's so many varied things that it's hard to really say quickly. I'll say that there's a whole swath of people who don't know or care about any of this, because they're just trying to literally make it from day to day and make sure their kids are fed. Because, you know, one of the ways that a lot of these Black Baltimore politicians get into power and stay in power is that they are so bad at what they do that there are just so many people that are disengaged from the process. And then you do have the folks that understand that a lot of the white media is racist. Fox 45 is racist, like very much so. So that's the thing. She wasn't necessarily wrong. It was interesting that when they start talking about her and really putting the heat on her, that's when she cares, because they've definitely been racist for a while. But I do think that the response sometimes from a lot of Black people when they see a Black leader be held to the, you know, have their feet held to the fire, is to eventually just go into defense mode, because you look at the class of people or what the people look like that are writing these stories, and they're mostly white. So it's like a hard needle to thread. And like the work that I do is really like trying to get people engaged again, making people like, there's so much. I was just getting my hair done yesterday, and the lady that was doing my hair was just like, what does any of this matter? Like, we know that these people don't care. We know that, you know, this is how it's been and this is how it always is. But I'm just like, for me, I'm just like, we can discuss all of these things at the same time, and we can hope for a better world. We can talk about the fact that, yes, there need to be more Black journalists doing real active investigating and journalism to hold all elected officials accountable. We can talk about the fact that there are elected officials that are going to be dragged through the mud for nothing because of the fact that they have Black skin. Like, all of these are conversations that we need to have, but right now there's not a lot of space to have them.
Fully agree. Fully agree with you there, Lisa, because, you know, I know, and listen, y'all, I know not everybody watching is in the DMV. However, I mean, something Kelly said earlier, which it was extremely poignant and true, which I'm sure rings true if you live in a city that has a Black elected official class or a Black political class, right? Like, Kelly said that she felt that Marilyn Mosby weaponizes her identity, right? To use it in order to really hurt people, right? Like, well, I'm a Black woman. I know what's best for this city. And, you know, I'm not out here to harm the city. I'm actually here to help. You should look at me as help. But, you know, Baltimore is a city that has experienced so much trauma, right? And it's been mostly Black people in charge for a nice long stretch of it. At least the last, 30. I mean, the last white mayor Baltimore had was Martin O'Malley. And that was what, 25 years ago, Lisa? So we've had a lot of Black people overseeing the city, Black police chiefs, Black police commissioners, Black city council people. And yet Baltimore still remains in the position that it is economically, and, you know, from dealing with a gun violence problem. Last night, if I'm not mistaken, was taxpayers' night in front of the city council. And I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure you were watching it, if I'm not mistaken. But talk to me about what are the people of Baltimore City saying about the way that crime is handled or mishandled in the city?
The funny thing is, when Marilyn Mosby's husband, Nick, took office, he did this big interview with the Baltimore Sun. And one of the things that he said in this interview was the defund the police movement was emotional. Like, basically, like, it's just some weirdos, some hippies that are just like wanting some pie in the sky stuff. At this taxpayers night, and one that was held, I want to say a month or two ago, by the Board of Estimates, people came with facts, figures, and concrete reasons why funding the police at the level that they're funded does not make logical sense. Talking about how this is the amount of money that could go towards schools. This is the amount of money that could go towards social services. This is the way that the police have not made me safe. I know at the first one, a woman talked about a few sexual assaults that she had been victim to, unfortunately, and the police were not helpful. A gentleman spoke last night about some other special needs that he had, that he was like, I don't want to run across police when I'm in, in maybe like a flare up of my illness, because I don't know what they could do to me. So it's just like the people of Baltimore, and a lot of this has been organized by a group called Organizing Black. It's a group of like young Black people, and they've kind of like made it very clear these are all the reasons why this shouldn't happen. And the last thing I'll say is the funny thing about Organizing Black is that for a long time, there's always been Black people as part of the movement, leading the movement in Baltimore City. But from what I've seen in the time that I've been covering it, is that a lot of it has been kind of like lefty white folks. So for a while, these lawmakers can say, oh, these are just like some random like white people. They think it's cute. It's like, a little blip, for them. They think it's cute to protest. They're going to have kids and move out of the city. We don't have to treat them seriously because they're not our constituents. No, now we're seeing Black people from all parts, East Baltimore, West Baltimore, showing up and saying, no, actually, we're here too, and we are not happy with the way things are going.
I didn't have a chance to check the Sun this morning. I'm curious how that taxpayers meeting was covered.
They deleted the first story that they did after the first taxpayers night did not even mention Organizing Black, even though most of the people who spoke either actively said, I am with Organizing Black, or they acknowledged the some of the language that Organizing Black had tweeted out and sent out prior to the event. So that they just weren't mentioned. In this one, a lot of the people that spoke not only talked about some of the things that I listed for why it's a bad reason to fund the police further, they addressed Keith Davis Jr.'s case, and they talked about the money that has been spent for all these trials. Both the Sun and WYPR just did not mention Keith Davis Jr. in their coverage. So it's like one of the things that I said was like, we hear all these sanitized versions of history. So what it's like now is literally watching history being whitewashed in front of our faces.
Lisa, that is heavy. And just for everybody's information, WYPR is the NPR affiliate in Baltimore City. And they, omitting irrelevant information from their coverage. So keep that in mind if you support NPR stations during their pledge drive. Maybe WYPR is not the station you want to give to. Lisa, from a media perspective, right? I mean, we know the Baltimore Sun is the paper of record for the city. And then we have lots of, well, not lots, but, the standard NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, local affiliates in Baltimore City. It doesn't seem, from when I was just going back in the past couple of days, researching Keith's case and the coverage about Keith's case, I mean, it was talked about, but like, I didn't hear reporters asking the questions, why do you keep trying this man, right? And you mentioned earlier, pardon me, Kelly mentioned earlier how Marilyn Mosby is the most powerful woman in the city. And she, in her office, in her husband's office, I suppose, clearly exert a lot of influence on influential people in the city, the media including a press conference. Was it this week, Lisa, where reporters were told in advance that there were questions that they were forbidden to ask, or the press conference would get shut down? What kind of fascist shit was that? Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. That's what happened. That's what happened. First of all, it was already crazy because it was to announce some new initiative that's not even really new, to figure out how to crack down on Black people with guns. But they said, the gentleman who was running the meeting, his office is investigating Marilyn Mosby for financial matters. So already that's crazy. But I guess the way that they decided to handle this was just saying, oh, you can't ask about it. And because Baltimore has a very weak and uninvested kind of class of journalists as a whole, nobody did. And they just wrote their, commercials for this initiative. Like Like, this was not a thing where something happened and the media was rushing to cover like this thing. There were press announcements given. The press was really giving them a hand in covering this, and they just went along with it. But then again, like I said, these are white people mostly, so these things don't affect them. And also, Baltimore is very much like has a very rigid kind of social structure. So these are people that they're friends with and drink with at the same places, and that's their friends. So that comes through in the journalism as well.
It's so gross. I'm so tired of it. It's really bad. And not to say that this is not, I mean, that's the problem though. This is the case in so many cities across the country.
Absolutely, like it is.
The size, the number of journalists and the number of media outlets have shrank considerably, right? So there are just far fewer jobs. So I guess people give elected officials passes so they can keep getting invited to the Christmas party. I mean, I'm confused, Lisa.
It's like a microcosm of what we saw with Trump. These people would go to the White House and sit in the press room, and then they would go hang out with Sarah Sanders or whoever else afterwards and have a great time. These are all the same people. They don't care. They don't have an investment in the story. It's fun for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, Lisa, that's why people like you are so vitally important for people to understand and get more context and nuance than from what mainstream outlets are able to provide. And the fact that, again, first of all, Lisa, can I give you let me give you some more props why I got you right here. So y'all, okay. So Marilyn Mosby, was it this week or last week? She went on Quicksilver show. It was this week, wasn't it?
It was this week, yes. Time is crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, this week.
Girl, I don't know. I barely know it's May. Okay, like I'm only this % positive it's 2021. I don't know anything about time. But okay, so everybody, there's a local radio personality, right? Who is on the flagship Black people radio station in Baltimore, 92Q. His name is DJ Quicksilver. Now, DJ Quicksilver had State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby on his show for an interview to ask a variety of things, give her a chance to plug her new programs or whatever. But he said in his tweet promoting the interview that he was going to ask her about the obscene gesture, the middle finger that she gave the supporter of Keith Davis Jr. And Lisa Snowden said, "Hey, nigga, did you tell everybody that you had donated to Marilyn Mosby? Like, did you disclose to your audience that you are a contributor? You have given money to Marilyn Mosby." And I even did a tiny bit more research. Lisa Quicksilver has played at events for Marilyn Mosby, right? He's a DJ, so he is Team Mosby. And after Lisa snatched him up on Twitter, the interview came down off the website. You cannot find this interview on the interwebs. It's gone. It's disappeared.
As of a few days ago, it was definitely still on his Instagram.
Oh, on the Instagram. Okay, so I was going to the link in the tweet to the radio station website. So it's still on his. Okay, then I'm gonna have to go look at that Instagram then. But the radio station said, no, you got to take this shit down and take it down. He did and tried to delete the tweet when Lisa asked him about what tweet did he delete, Lisa? And you were like, nigga, screenshots, nigga, I got you.
I think that when you donate through Act Blue, which is I think one of the ways that a lot of Democrats use to like funnel, run their donation system. Mm-hmm. You know how a lot of times you can do something and it'll say, you can tweet about this. So it seemed like an auto-generated tweet where he had made a donation and then it was hooked up to his Twitter account where it said, I just donated to Marilyn Mosby via blah, blah, blah. You can do it too.
And
but
that
like,
never
she's smart. But this is the thing about her is that she's very smart because he's not a journalist. So he's not beholden to the same kind of standards as like I am. Even after that middle finger incident, she was on MSNBC the next morning. So like because there's like somebody in the audience mentioned like a talented 10. So yeah, all those people link up. They all got each other's backs. So she kind of like, once she messes something up, she does damage control. And then she gets a very gracious interview on on a radio station that's in both Baltimore and DC, or she's on MSNBC with Larry Kramer, talking about progressive politics. So,
well, let me push back slightly, because I did radio. I was radio personality for a long time, and the radio companies, the stations, the companies that own the radio stations around election time, they are very particular. Like you have to be sure to phrase things certain ways, because honestly, like as a radio personality, he is not supposed to be endorsing any candidate in one direction or another. Now, yeah, because these are the public airwaves, right? So, well, let me rephrase. What I first of all, I don't think that he can endorse, but if you give, for example, this had been during election time, if you're allowing Marilyn Mosby to come on your station unchallenged, basically, her challenger or whomever is challenging her should be able to get equal time as well. Like it is not supposed to be one-sided. Now, I know the FCC stopped doing a job 44 years ago, and I know they can give a fuck about anything that goes across over the airways, unless it's Janet Jackson's titty, then everything is a big fucking problem, right? So no, he ain't supposed to be doing that, Lisa. He ain't supposed to be. He's supposed to be carrying it like that. Well, Lisa, I want to thank you again for making some time to give us some context and some nuance about how the media is the police stenographer, rather the mainstream outlets in Baltimore City act as cop stenographers and prosecution stenographers, obviously. So I'm very appreciative that there are people like you, there are people like Justine Byrne, there are, people like Brandon Soderberg out there making sure that y'all are holding these politicians' feet to the fire and calling them out on their bullshit, because they lie like they breathe. It's crazy.
It's true.
Yes, but thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you making some time and joining us, everybody. That's Lisa Snowden McCrae. You need to follow her on Twitter. She is probably one of the best people to follow on Twitter, at Lisa McCrae. Give her a follow, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear. Thank you. And gang, of course, we want to thank Kelly Davis, especially for making time to talk to us about Keith's case. And y'all, there's no doubt in my mind. There's probably 20, 50 Keith Davis Jr.'s in every single city across this country, in towns big and small. Cops make up shit. They plant evidence. Prosecutors go along with the shit. Crime labs go along with the shit. Google DC crime lab right now and tell me what comes back. What's going to come back is that the Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, the crime lab for the nation's capital, had their accreditation suspended. Okay, so the conspiracy to fuck over Black people is the tentacles reach everywhere. And Keith Davis Jr.'s case is a perfect example of that. We will keep you updated, y'all. A fifth trial, I don't think that a date has been named, but as Kelly said, it sure appears as though Marilyn Mosby is going to try for number 5 with this. And please be looking at the so-called progressive prosecutors skeptically. Do you know why? Because at the end of the day, a prosecutor is still part of this criminal injustice apparatus. Their job is to put people in jail. It's not to get justice, it's to put bodies in jail. So there are no good prosecutors. Kiss my ass. That nigga in Philly, he all right, but he's still, y'all feel me? He might be the best one, actually. But at the end of the day, his job still is to put people in jail. So y'all, let's stop being so proud of our people and make sure we hold our people accountable and make sure that people are using their position and their title and their influence in order to better the community, not just further themselves politically or on MSNBC or whatever. But anyway, thank you very much, Kelly Davis. Thank you very much, Lisa Snowden McCrae. And before we go, y'all, I wanted to take a moment to wish our little baby, our dear Genevieve, who is the producer here. She does booking for us. I wanted to wish Genevieve a happy belated birthday. It was Genevieve's birthday this week, and Genevieve didn't tell anybody. So like, I almost had to like pull it out of her, and I'm like, what do you mean? It's your birthday. And then I said, Genevieve, you've been a Gemini this whole time in my presence. I had no clue. Genevieve is the best covert Gemini I've ever met. So happy birthday to Genevieve. I know she's not working today because she is out kicking it, turn it up, you know how Haitian people do. So yes, so happy birthday to Genevieve. You guys wish Genevieve a happy birthday. And gang, we will see y'all on Tuesday for the Tuesday edition of Burn It Down with Kim Brown. I appreciate all y'all's support so much. Thank you for helping us get over 1,400 followers on Twitter. And I hope y'all help us get over 2,000 subscribers on this here YouTube channel. We would really, really appreciate that. And and thank you, Black Magic. I saw that you cash apped us $25 at the start of the show because you are my favorite. You're my favorite, and my favorite. And y'all are my favorites. Y'all know I'm bullshit. But no, Black Magic, thank you very much for the support. And thank you for anybody who has been supporting this program materially. We certainly appreciate it. Okay, on behalf of Genevieve, Tunde, and Molly, it is I, Kim Brown, and we have just finished burning it down. So you guys enjoy your weekend. Again, COVID, don't sleep, okay? Vaccinated or not, please keep your distance, wash your hands, wear your mask if you are inside, just because, shit's crazy and the shit ain't over, and we would be foolish to just relax entirely. So anywho, have a great Memorial weekend, everybody. Please be safe. I will see y'all back here Tuesday. Friends, see y'all later. Bye-bye.